Let's talk about something that can throw anyone off balance: disrespect. It stings, it frustrates, and if you're not careful, it can pull you into a battle you never signed up for. But here's the thing: how you handle disrespect, especially from women, says everything about who you are. It's not about winning an argument or proving a point. It's about standing firm in your value without losing yourself in the process. Imagine this. Someone throws disrespect your way. Your first instinct might be to fire back, to match their energy, to prove you're not someone to mess with. But what if I told you the real power lies in doing the exact opposite? What if the most impactful thing you can do is to stay calm, set boundaries, and rise above the noise? This isn't about being passive or letting someone walk all over you. It's about choosing to respond in a way that protects your peace, commands respect, and ultimately changes the game. Because here's the truth: disrespect says more about them than it does about you. And how you handle it, that's where your strength shines. So let's dive into what it really means to handle disrespect with grace, confidence, and unshakable self-respect. Because you deserve to navigate these moments not just with your dignity intact, but with your head held high. Disrespect is a reflection of the other person, not your worth. This statement is a powerful reminder that when someone treats you poorly, it's not a measure of your value, but rather a window into their own struggles, insecurities, or limitations. It's easy to take disrespect personally, to internalize it and let it chip away at your self-esteem. But the truth is, disrespect says far more about the person dishing it out than it does about you. Understanding this can be liberating. It allows you to detach emotionally, protect your peace, and respond in a way that reflects your self-respect rather than their negativity. Think about it. When someone is disrespectful, they're often coming from a place of pain, frustration, or ignorance. Maybe they're dealing with their own insecurities and putting you down makes them feel temporarily better. Maybe they're projecting their unresolved issues onto you because they don't know how to handle their emotions. Or maybe they've simply never learned how to communicate with kindness and respect. Whatever the reason, their behavior is a reflection of their inner world, not yours. This doesn't mean you have to excuse or tolerate disrespect. Absolutely not. But it does mean you can stop internalizing it. You can stop letting it define how you see yourself. When you understand that disrespect is about the other person, you free yourself from the emotional weight of their actions. You stop carrying their baggage and start protecting your peace. Let's break this down further. Imagine you're at work and a colleague makes a snide comment about your ideas in a meeting. Your first instinct might be to feel embarrassed, angry, or defensive. You might start questioning yourself: did I say something wrong? Do they not respect me? Am I not good enough? But here's the shift. Instead of making it about you, ask yourself, what's going on with them? Maybe they're feeling threatened by your creativity. Maybe they're stressed about their own performance and taking it out on you. Maybe they're just having a bad day. Whatever the reason, their comment says more about their state of mind than it does about your abilities. The same principle applies in personal relationships. Let's say you're in a situation where a woman, whether it's a partner, a friend, or even a stranger, speaks to you in a disrespectful way. It's easy to feel hurt or offended, to wonder if you've done something to deserve it. But again, the disrespect is not about you. It's about her. Maybe she's dealing with unresolved anger. Maybe she's testing your boundaries. Maybe she's simply mirroring behavior she's seen elsewhere. Whatever the case, her actions are a reflection of her, not you. Now, this doesn't mean you should just brush it off and pretend it doesn't hurt. Disrespect can sting, and that's okay. Acknowledge the feeling, but don't let it consume you. Instead, use it as an opportunity to practice emotional resilience. Remind yourself of your worth. Remind yourself that you don't need anyone else's approval or validation to know who you are. You are enough just as you are. One of the most powerful things you can do when faced with disrespect is to detach emotionally. This doesn't mean you become cold or indifferent. It means you choose not to let someone else's behavior dictate your emotions. You choose to stay grounded in your own sense of self-worth. When you detach, you take away the power that disrespect has over you. You stop giving the other person control over your feelings and your reactions. Detaching also allows you to respond rather than react. There's a big difference between the two. Reacting is impulsive, emotional, and often escalates the situation. Responding, on the other hand, is thoughtful, intentional, and rooted in self-awareness. When you respond to disrespect from a place of detachment, you're able to handle the situation with grace and confidence. You're able to set boundaries without losing your cool. For example, let's go back to the scenario with the disrespectful colleague. Instead of reacting with anger or defensiveness, you might choose to respond calmly and assertively. You could say something like, "I'd appreciate it if we could keep the discussion focused on the ideas rather than personal comments." This response addresses the behavior without stooping to their level. It shows that you respect yourself enough to stand up for yourself, but you're also mature enough to do it without drama. The same approach applies in personal relationships. If a woman speaks to you disrespectfully, you might choose to respond with something like, "I'm happy to have this conversation, but I need it to be respectful." This sets a clear boundary while also leaving the door open for constructive dialogue. It shows that you value yourself enough to demand respect, but you're also willing to engage in a healthy way. Ultimately, understanding that disrespect is a reflection of the other person is about reclaiming your power. It's about refusing to let someone else's behavior dictate how you feel about yourself. It's about recognizing that your worth is not up for debate. You are worthy of respect, not because of what you do or what you achieve, but simply because you exist. So the next time someone disrespects you, take a deep breath and remind yourself, this is not about me, this is about them. And then choose to respond in a way that honors your worth and protects your peace, because you deserve nothing less.
Staying calm and composed is your superpower. This isn't just a feel-good statement, it's a truth that can transform how you handle disrespect and navigate challenging situations. When someone disrespects you, it's natural to feel a surge of emotions: anger, frustration, hurt, or even embarrassment. These emotions are valid, but they can also cloud your judgment and lead to reactions you might later regret. Staying calm, on the other hand, gives you clarity, control, and the ability to respond in a way that aligns with your values and self-respect. Think about it. When you stay calm in the face of disrespect, you're not just managing the situation, you're managing yourself. You're choosing not to let someone else's behavior dictate your emotions or actions. This doesn't mean you're suppressing your feelings or pretending everything is fine. It means you're processing those feelings in a way that allows you to act intentionally rather than impulsively. It's about taking a step back, breathing, and deciding how you want to show up in that moment. Staying calm also sends a powerful message to the other person. It shows that you're not easily rattled, that you respect yourself too much to engage in petty drama, and that you're in control of the situation. This can be incredibly disarming. When someone disrespects you, they're often expecting a reaction: anger, defensiveness, or even submission. But when you respond with calmness, you disrupt their expectations and take the power back. You show that their behavior doesn't have the ability to shake your confidence or self-worth. Of course, staying calm isn't always easy. It takes practice, self-awareness, and a willingness to pause before reacting. One of the first steps is recognizing your triggers. What kind of behavior or comments tend to set you off? Is it being talked down to? Is it being ignored or dismissed? Is it someone raising their voice or using harsh language? Once you know your triggers, you can start preparing for them. You can create a mental game plan for how you'll respond when they inevitably happen. For example, if you know that being interrupted makes your blood boil, you might decide in advance to take a deep breath and wait for the person to finish before you speak. Another key to staying calm is managing your physical response. When you're faced with disrespect, your body often reacts before your mind does. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense up, and your breathing becomes shallow. These are all signs that your fight or flight response has been activated, but here's the thing, you can interrupt this response by consciously changing your physical state. Take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, unclench your fists. These small actions can help you regain control and create a sense of calm, even in the midst of chaos. It's also important to reframe the situation in your mind. Instead of seeing disrespect as a personal attack, try to see it as an opportunity to practice emotional resilience. Think of it as a test of your ability to stay grounded and centered no matter what's happening around you. This shift in perspective can make a huge difference. It takes the focus off the other person and puts it back on you, where it belongs. Staying calm doesn't mean you have to tolerate disrespect. On the contrary, it gives you the clarity and confidence to set boundaries and stand up for yourself in a way that's firm but respectful. For example, if someone is speaking to you in a condescending tone, you might say something like, "I'd appreciate it if we could keep this conversation respectful." This kind of response is much more effective when it's delivered calmly and assertively rather than with anger or defensiveness. Another benefit of staying calm is that it often disarms the other person. When someone is being disrespectful, they're usually expecting you to react, to get upset, to argue, to match their energy. But when you stay calm, you throw them off balance. You show them that their behavior doesn't have the power to rattle you. This can sometimes lead to a shift in the dynamic where the other person realizes they're not going to get the reaction they were hoping for and starts to back down. Finally, staying calm is a gift you give yourself. It allows you to walk away from a difficult situation with your dignity intact. It prevents you from saying or doing something you might regret later, and it helps you maintain your sense of self-worth even when someone else is trying to chip away at it. So the next time you're faced with disrespect, remember this: staying calm is your superpower. It's not about being passive or letting someone else off the hook. It's about taking control of the situation and responding in a way that reflects your values and your self-respect. It's about showing up as the best version of yourself, even when it's hard. And trust me, when you do that, you'll walk away feeling stronger, more confident, and more in control than ever before. Boundaries are non-negotiable. Set them with confidence. This principle is foundational to maintaining self-respect and healthy relationships, especially when dealing with disrespect. Boundaries are the invisible lines that define what you will and won't accept in your interactions with others. They are not about controlling someone else's behavior, but about protecting your own well-being and ensuring that you're treated with the respect you deserve. Setting boundaries with confidence means communicating them clearly, enforcing them consistently, and doing so without apology or guilt. The first step to setting boundaries is understanding why they're so important. Without boundaries, you're essentially giving others permission to treat you however they want. You're sending the message that your time, energy, and emotions are up for grabs. And when you don't set boundaries, people will inevitably push the limits, sometimes unintentionally, sometimes deliberately. Disrespect often creeps in when boundaries are unclear or non-existent. It's like leaving the door to your house wide open and then being surprised when someone walks in uninvited. Boundaries are that door. They protect your peace, your sanity, and your sense of self-worth. But setting boundaries isn't just about saying no or drawing a line in the sand. It's about knowing your worth and having the courage to stand by it. It's about recognizing that you deserve to be treated with respect, kindness, and consideration, and that it's your responsibility to ensure that happens. This is where confidence comes in. Setting boundaries with confidence means doing so without apology, without guilt, and without fear of how the other person might react. It means owning your right to define what's acceptable and what's not. So how do you set boundaries with confidence? It starts with self-awareness. You need to know what your boundaries are before you can communicate them to others. Take some time to reflect on your values, your limits, and your non-negotiables. What behaviors are you willing to tolerate and what crosses the line? For example, maybe you're okay with constructive criticism, but you won't accept being yelled at or belittled. Maybe you're fine with helping others, but you won't let them take advantage of your time or resources. Whatever your boundaries are, get clear on them. Once you know your boundaries, the next step is to communicate them clearly and assertively. This is where many people struggle. They worry about coming across as rude, selfish, or demanding. But here's the truth. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's self-respect. It's not about controlling others. It's about controlling how you allow others to treat you. When you communicate your boundaries, do so with kindness but firmness. Use I statements to express your needs without blaming or accusing the other person. For example, instead of saying, "You're always so disrespectful," you might say, "I need our conversations to be respectful, and I won't engage if they're not." Of course, setting boundaries is only half the battle. The other half is enforcing them. This is where confidence really comes into play. When someone crosses a boundary, you need to be prepared to take action. This might mean walking away from a conversation, ending a relationship, or simply reiterating your boundary and holding your ground. It's not always easy, especially if the other person pushes back or tries to guilt trip you. But remember, boundaries are meaningless if you don't enforce them. Enforcing boundaries also requires consistency. You can't set a boundary one day and let it slide the next. That sends mixed messages and undermines your credibility. If you've said you won't tolerate being spoken to in a certain way, then you need to stick to that, even if it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. Consistency is what teaches people how to treat you. It's what shows them that your boundaries are non-negotiable.
Boundaries are non-negotiable. Set them with confidence. This principle is foundational to maintaining self-respect and healthy relationships, especially when dealing with disrespect. Boundaries are the invisible lines that define what you will and won't accept in your interactions with others. They are not about controlling someone else's behavior, but about protecting your own well-being and ensuring that you're treated with the respect you deserve. Setting boundaries with confidence means communicating them clearly, enforcing them consistently, and doing so without apology or guilt. The first step to setting boundaries is understanding why they're so important. Without boundaries, you're essentially giving others permission to treat you however they want. You're sending the message that your time, energy, and emotions are up for grabs. And when you don't set boundaries, people will inevitably push the limits. Sometimes unintentionally, sometimes deliberately. Disrespect often creeps in when boundaries are unclear or non-existent. It's like leaving the door to your house wide open and then being surprised when someone walks in uninvited. Boundaries are that door. They protect your peace, your sanity, and your sense of self-worth. But setting boundaries isn't just about saying no or drawing a line in the sand. It's about knowing your worth and having the courage to stand by it. It's about recognizing that you deserve to be treated with respect, kindness, and consideration, and that it's your responsibility to ensure that happens. This is where confidence comes in. Setting boundaries with confidence means doing so without apology, without guilt, and without fear of how the other person might react. It means owning your right to define what's acceptable and what's not. So how do you set boundaries with confidence? It starts with self-awareness. You need to know what your boundaries are before you can communicate them to others. Take some time to reflect on your values, your limits, and your non-negotiables. What behaviors are you willing to tolerate, and what crosses the line? For example, maybe you're okay with constructive criticism, but you won't accept being yelled at or belittled. Maybe you're fine with helping others, but you won't let them take advantage of your time or resources. Whatever your boundaries are, get clear on them. Once you know your boundaries, the next step is to communicate them clearly and assertively. This is where many people struggle. They worry about coming across as rude, selfish, or demanding. But here's the truth. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's self-respect. It's not about controlling others, it's about controlling how you allow others to treat you. When you communicate your boundaries, do so with kindness but firmness. Use I statements to express your needs without blaming or accusing the other person. For example, instead of saying, "You're always so disrespectful," you might say, "I need our conversations to be respectful, and I won't engage if they're not." Of course, setting boundaries is only half the battle. The other half is enforcing them. This is where confidence really comes into play. When someone crosses a boundary, you need to be prepared to take action. This might mean walking away from a conversation, ending a relationship, or simply reiterating your boundary and holding your ground. It's not always easy, especially if the other person pushes back or tries to guilt trip you. But remember, boundaries are meaningless if you don't enforce them. Enforcing boundaries also requires consistency. You can't set a boundary one day and let it slide the next. That sends mixed messages and undermines your credibility. If you've said you won't tolerate being spoken to in a certain way, then you need to stick to that, even if it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. Consistency is what teaches people how to treat you. It's what shows them that your boundaries are non-negotiable. Now let's talk about what happens when you set and enforce boundaries with confidence. First, you'll notice a shift in how people treat you. When you clearly communicate your limits and stand by them, others will start to take you more seriously. They'll understand that you respect yourself, and they'll be more likely to respect you in return. This doesn't mean everyone will suddenly change their behavior. Some people will test your boundaries, and others may not respect them at all, but that's okay. The goal isn't to control others, it's to control how you allow others to treat you. Second, setting boundaries with confidence will boost your self-esteem. Every time you stand up for yourself, you're sending a message to your subconscious that you're worthy of respect. You're reinforcing the belief that your needs and feelings matter. Over time, this builds a stronger sense of self-worth and makes it easier to set and enforce boundaries in the future. Finally, boundaries create healthier, more balanced relationships. They prevent resentment from building up and ensure that both parties are on the same page. When you set boundaries, you're not just protecting yourself, you're also creating a framework for mutual respect and understanding. This is true in all types of relationships, whether it's with a partner, a friend, a colleague, or even a stranger. So, how do you start setting boundaries with confidence? Begin small. Identify one area of your life where you feel disrespected or taken advantage of, and set a clear boundary around it. Practice communicating that boundary in a calm, assertive way, and when someone crosses it, take action, whether that means speaking up, walking away, or reevaluating the relationship. Remember, boundaries are non-negotiable. They're not something you compromise on or apologize for. They're a reflection of your self-respect and your commitment to living a life that honors your values and your worth. So set them with confidence, enforce them with consistency, and watch as your relationships and your sense of self transform for the better. Respond, don't react. Your actions speak louder than words. This principle is a cornerstone of emotional intelligence and a powerful tool for handling disrespect. The difference between reacting and responding may seem subtle, but it's profound. Reacting is impulsive, emotional, and often escalates conflict. It's like throwing gasoline on a fire. It might feel satisfying in the moment, but it only makes things worse. Responding, on the other hand, is thoughtful, intentional, and rooted in self-awareness. It's like pouring water on that fire. It diffuses the situation and allows for a more constructive outcome. When someone disrespects you, your initial reaction is often driven by emotion, anger, hurt, frustration, or even embarrassment. These emotions are valid, but they're not always the best guide for how to handle the situation. Reacting from a place of emotion can lead to saying or doing things you later regret. It can turn a small disagreement into a full-blown argument or damage a relationship beyond repair. Responding, however, allows you to take a step back, assess the situation, and choose your next move carefully. It's about taking control of the narrative rather than letting your emotions control you. So how do you shift from reacting to responding? It starts with self-awareness. You need to recognize when you're feeling triggered and pause before you act. This pause is crucial. It gives you the space to process your emotions, gather your thoughts, and decide how you want to handle the situation. Think of it as hitting the reset button on your brain. Instead of immediately lashing out or shutting down, you take a moment to breathe and center yourself. One of the most effective ways to create this pause is through mindfulness. Pay attention to your body's physical response when you feel disrespected. Are your muscles tensing up? Is your heart racing? Are your thoughts spiraling? These are all signs that your fight or flight response has been activated. When you notice these signs, take a deep breath. Count to 10. Do whatever it takes to calm your nervous system and bring yourself back to the present moment. This simple act can make all the difference in how you handle the situation. Once you've created that pause, the next step is to reframe the situation. Instead of seeing the disrespect as a personal attack, try to view it as an opportunity to practice emotional resilience. Ask yourself, what's really going on here? Why is this person behaving this way? How can I handle this in a way that aligns with my values? This shift in perspective allows you to approach the situation with curiosity rather than defensiveness. It helps you see the bigger picture and respond in a way that's constructive rather than destructive. Another key to responding effectively is to focus on the behavior, not the person. When someone disrespects you, it's easy to make it about their character, to label them as rude, selfish, or toxic. But this kind of thinking only fuels negativity and makes it harder to resolve the issue. Instead, focus on the specific behavior that's bothering you and address it directly. For example, instead of saying, "You're so disrespectful," you might say, "I felt hurt when you interrupted me during the meeting." This approach is less accusatory and more likely to lead to a productive conversation. It's also important to choose your battles wisely. Not every act of disrespect requires a response. Sometimes the best thing you can do is let it go. This doesn't mean you're condoning the behavior or letting someone walk all over you. It simply means you're choosing not to engage in a battle that isn't worth your time or energy. Ask yourself, is this worth addressing? Will responding make a difference, or will it just escalate the situation? If the answer is no, then it's okay to walk away and focus on something more important. When you do choose to respond, do so with clarity and intention. Be clear about what you need and why it matters. Use I statements to express your feelings without blaming or attacking the other person. For example, instead of saying, "You never listen to me," you might say, "I feel unheard when my ideas are dismissed without discussion." This approach is more likely to be received positively and can open the door to a more respectful dialogue. Another powerful way to respond is by setting boundaries. If someone's behavior is consistently disrespectful, it's important to let them know what you will and won't tolerate. For example, you might say, "I'm happy to have this conversation, but I need it to be respectful. If that's not possible, we'll need to revisit this later." This kind of response communicates your expectations clearly and shows that you're not willing to engage in disrespectful behavior. Finally, remember that your actions speak louder than words. How you respond to disrespect sends a powerful message about who you are and what you stand for. When you respond with calmness, clarity, and confidence, you show that you respect yourself too much to be dragged into drama. You demonstrate emotional maturity and self-control, which can earn you respect from others, even those who initially disrespected you. Responding instead of reacting also has a ripple effect. It sets a standard for how you expect to be treated and encourages others to rise to that standard. It creates healthier, more respectful interactions and builds stronger relationships. And perhaps most importantly, it allows you to walk away from difficult situations with your dignity and self-respect intact. So the next time you're faced with disrespect, remember this: you have a choice. You can react impulsively and let your emotions take the wheel, or you can respond thoughtfully and take control of the situation. Choose to respond. Choose to act in a way that reflects your values and your self-worth. Because when you do, you're not just handling disrespect. You're rising above it. Elevate the situation by focusing on solutions, not arguments. This approach is a cornerstone of emotional intelligence and a powerful way to handle disrespect, especially when tensions are high. When someone disrespects you, it's easy to get caught up in the heat of the moment, to focus on proving your point or defending yourself. But here's the truth: arguments rarely resolve anything. They often escalate conflict, create resentment, and leave both parties feeling worse than before. Focusing on solutions, on the other hand, shifts the dynamic entirely. It transforms a potentially toxic interaction into an opportunity for growth, understanding, and resolution. Let's start by understanding why arguments are so counterproductive. When you argue, you're essentially engaging in a battle of egos. Each person is focused on being right, on winning the argument, rather than on finding common ground or resolving the issue. This creates a win-lose mentality, where one person's victory comes at the expense of the other's defeat. And even if you win the argument, you may lose something far more valuable: respect, trust, or the relationship itself. Focusing on solutions, however, changes the game. It shifts the focus from who's right to what's right. It encourages collaboration rather than competition. Instead of trying to prove your point, you're working together to find a way forward. This approach not only diffuses tension, but also fosters mutual respect and understanding. It shows that you're more interested in resolving the issue than in being right, which can be incredibly disarming and inspiring to the other person. So how do you elevate the situation by focusing on solutions? It starts with a mindset shift. Instead of seeing the disrespect as a personal attack, try to view it as a problem to be solved. Ask yourself, what's really going on here? What's the underlying issue? How can we address this in a way that works for both of us? This shift in perspective allows you to approach the situation with curiosity and openness rather than defensiveness or anger. One of the most effective ways to focus on solutions is to practice active listening. When someone disrespects you, it's often because they feel unheard or misunderstood. By listening actively, you show that you value their perspective and are willing to engage in a constructive dialogue. Active listening involves giving the other person your full attention, acknowledging their feelings, and reflecting back what you've heard to ensure understanding. For example, you might say, "It sounds like you're frustrated because you feel like I'm not taking your concerns seriously. Is that right?" This kind of response validates their feelings and opens the door to a more productive conversation. Another key to focusing on solutions is to stay future-oriented. Instead of dwelling on what's already happened or assigning blame, focus on what can be done moving forward. Ask questions like, what do we need to do to resolve this? How can we prevent this from happening again? What would a good outcome look like for both of us? These questions shift the focus from the past to the future, creating a sense of possibility and hope. It's also important to approach the situation with empathy. Try to put yourself in the other person's shoes and understand where they're coming from. This doesn't mean you have to agree with their behavior or condone their disrespect. It simply means you're willing to see the situation from their perspective and acknowledge their feelings. Empathy can be incredibly powerful in diffusing tension and building bridges. It shows that you're not just focused on your own needs, but also on finding a solution that works for everyone involved. When focusing on solutions, it's crucial to stay calm and composed. Emotions can easily derail a conversation and turn it into an argument. By staying calm, you create a safe space for dialogue and problem solving. Take deep breaths, speak in a steady tone, and maintain open body language. These small actions can have a big impact on the tone and direction of the conversation. Another effective strategy is to use we language instead of you or I language. For example, instead of saying, "You need to stop being so disrespectful," you might say, "We need to find a way to communicate more respectfully." This approach fosters a sense of teamwork and collaboration, making it more likely that the other person will be open to finding a solution. It's also helpful to brainstorm multiple solutions and be willing to compromise. Rarely is there only one way to resolve an issue, and being flexible can lead to a more satisfying outcome for both parties. For example, if the disrespect stems from a misunderstanding, you might suggest clarifying your intentions or setting clearer expectations moving forward. If it's a recurring issue, you might propose establishing new boundaries or guidelines for communication. The key is to be open to different possibilities and willing to work together to find the best solution. Finally, remember that focusing on solutions is not about avoiding conflict or sweeping issues under the rug. It's about addressing conflict in a way that's constructive and respectful. It's about finding a path forward that honors both your needs and the needs of the other person. This approach not only resolves the immediate issue, but also strengthens the relationship and builds trust for the future. So the next time you're faced with disrespect, resist the urge to argue. Instead, focus on solutions. Listen actively, stay future-oriented, and approach the situation with empathy and calmness. By doing so, you'll not only resolve the issue at hand, but also elevate the situation to a higher level of understanding and respect. And in the process, you'll demonstrate emotional maturity, leadership, and a commitment to building healthier, more meaningful connections.